Hello and welcome back to the Boropolis podcast. As always, I am joined with Nathan. And well, this week, if ever the phrase typical Boro could be used, it's for the two results that we're about to talk about in this episode, Nathan. From the highs of beating the league leaders to the lows of the capitulation yesterday at Vicarage Road. As I say, it's been one of those weeks where on Tuesday night, you're on top of the world. And on Saturday night, you're thinking, why? Why did we get the curse of supporting this club? But of course, as I say, a lot of the time, you've got to take the highs with the lows supporting Middlesbrough, as you do with any other club, really. And as frustrating as it is, I already can't wait to be back at the Riverside for the Bristol City game, and I'm dreading the international break, Nathan. You have actually had somewhat of an international break yourself, Nathan, haven't you? You have snuck away for a little city break. Yeah, Nathan, how was your trip to Prague?
It was lovely, mate. Yeah, obviously didn't see too much of yesterday's game with a good few pints of Pilsner down me. But yeah, a nice trip away and yeah, catching the game coming through on notifications and clips. Yeah, just absolute nightmare. As you mentioned, the highs of midweek going into yesterday, very much full of optimism and yeah, it soon gets sapped out of you a little bit. But yeah, I suppose it's best to start with the positivity for the podcast with the away win at the Hawthorns on Tuesday night, Chris. What was your gut feeling going into this game?
To be honest, I think we discussed it on the back end of last week's podcast, and we both said you'd take a point now. You know, we were going away to the Hawthorns, which is a ground where Middlesbrough haven't had much luck over the years, really. And I think more importantly, when you come up against West Brom these days, you're coming up against Carlos Corberan. And it just seems like whenever he's got his hands on a team against Middlesbrough, he's just done a job on us for the most part. And if I'm honest, yeah, we'd improved against Stoke. Of course, we had. We obviously saw the introduction of McGree and Doak. And you thought, well, there was obvious improvement, but you know, you're going to have to go up another level going to the Hawthorns and going to West Brom, who of course had a great start, despite, you know, being beaten in their previous game prior to that trip to the Hawthorns. But yeah, to be honest, I went there with a little bit more confidence than what I would have prior to Stoke. But, you know, as I say, it was a case of if we'd have gone there and got a point, and I think most would agree they'd have been, you know, absolutely chuffed. And then obviously what transpired, it was, well, I think for me, definitely, I'm sure it's got to be right up there for most, our most complete performance of the season.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, Chris. Apart from the Leeds game in the Carabao Cup, it was up there was with our best performances. Not necessarily in front of goal, but we took a chance in a game of not too many. I thought that West Brom were pretty flat, if I'm honest, in the game. As predicted last week, Alex Moore did go back into their midfield after they previously lost to Sheffield Wednesday, and you could tell the difference already. He was trying to dictate things when they did have possession of the football. Obviously, we usually dominate games, and we did in this one. I thought we did well in the early stages. We created a very, very big chance that should have been put away with McGree. Azaz does his usual chop outside onto his right foot and tries to fire across into the far corner. Alex Palmer makes a good save and it parries out to McGree, who's 6, 7 yards out. And yeah, okay, there's a man diving in front of the ball, but he
Yeah, he's
puts
got to
that one
score.
way, he
He's got
puts
to score.
yeah, puts it way over the bar. But I think that on the whole, we did well in the first half. There was a couple of shaky moments. Luke Ayling trying to overplay a couple of times, and also one in which they counter-attacked on us, and the final ball from Madja to Wallace was just a little bit off. I think had it been perfectly weighted, it would have been a very, very good chance. Probably up there with the best chance of the first half for McGree. But yeah, going into the break, I thought that we did pretty well, and I felt that going into the second half that the game was definitely there to be won. It was pretty open at times in terms of in our game against Stoke, we worked a lot of opportunities for Dork down the right hand side and isolating him against Borkat, their fullback. This was a little bit more difficult to do against Hegem, but he did get some joy. One in the second half, a ball from Hackney over the top, and his touch was phenomenal. Took him straight through into the box, and Palmer once again made a really good save. But yeah, we were very much on top leading up to the goal, which was scored by Starboy.
Yeah, it was. And just before going back to another point that I made in last week's episode, just before we do move on from the first half and kind of just echoing everything that you said, I did think we had the better of the first half. Probably not so much in terms of like, Stoke, where we were just carving them open time and time again, and Doak had the beating of his man. But one of the other big chances in the first half, where in fairness, he does everything right, and Palmer just makes a really good save. Latif header. I think it was actually Ayling which crossed the ball in that duo that we had so much joy from at the back end of last season. And Ayling does his usual, clips it towards the back post, and like I say, Latif done everything right, directed his header low, and yeah, as I say, Palmer makes a great save. But for those of you which did kind of get towards the back end of last week's podcast, I predicted him to score a header, and 2 games have passed and he still hasn't scored. But, there's still, the point still stands that I made last week. He's doing some great work off the ball. He just more than ever really, really, really needs a goal just for confidence, I think. But yeah, going back to what you said, obviously we'd had a couple of chances. Doak had the one where he gets in behind, and to be fair, again, great touch, does everything right. I think he just tries to slide it through Palmer's legs, and for me, Palmer's probably up there with one of the best goalkeepers in the league. He just makes himself really big and saves it. And then, as you say, I think in the end, the goal comes from kind of like a multiple pass move where Boro retained it really well, recycled the ball. A key thing for me all game, and something which is becoming apparent when these two play well, is that more often than not, Middlesbrough play well as a kind of well-oiled machine. Aidan Morris and Hayden Hackney, that partnership just seems to be growing each game, really. And I think one of the main reasons why we beat West Brom was the constant recycling of the ball. As I say, the constant kind of urge of Morris and Hackney just wanting to get on the ball and keep the rotations going, keep West Brom moving side to side, keep kind of basically allowing us to fashion openings, whether it was McGree coming in and Borges a few times did quite well in getting forward. But yeah, as I say, the actual kind of nucleus of the goal, and although it's Hayden Hackney which puts it in, the pass from Doak to McGree on the edge of the box, it takes 3 or 4 men out of the game. It's that little bit of game-changing star quality that kind of we all thought he was going to provide when he come in. And I think when we signed him, Chris Jones, the head of recruitment, put out a post to say kind of the difference maker or something like that, or potential difference maker. And yeah, he hasn't put the ball in the back of the net, but the pass is sublime. And then McGree, sort of similar to last week, really, gets a Busquets level assist. He just slightly cushions it to Hackney. And actually, last week, ironically, I was having a pop at Hackney for passing one from the edge of the box. And to be fair, this goal it comes from Hayden Hackney, just basically with a complete load of composure, just basically bending the ball into the far corner. And when it hits the back of the net, it almost takes forever to hit the back of the net. It feels like that. But yeah, the pass from Doak and the finish from Hackney, 2 massive bits of quality. And obviously, one thing that that has been highlighted recently is the fact that Grant Ledbetter has been working with Hayden Hackney on his finishing, and that's an area of Hayden Hackney's game that he's wanting to improve on. And yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful goal. The celebration is possibly already in the iconic category, standing on the advertising boards right in front of that Boro away end. And the only thing in my mind, as well as celebrating the goal, was that's incredibly slippy. With our injury record, please do not fall off that.
Please get down. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great goal. Lovely, lovely finish from Hackney. He just sort of caresses it into that far corner. And I think they're some of the most sort of satisfying goals to go in, just sort of bending away from the goalkeeper. He's trying his best to get there, but yeah, he's just too far away in the end. And yeah, I thought from then on, after getting that goal, that we would have to soak up a bit of pressure, which we did. Madja had a good chance, a ball coming across the front post from Moat, and he just beat Dieng to the ball, but knocked it wide of the far post. But apart from that chance, really, he had another one which he hit the side netting, but there wasn't too much else. I thought that we defended really well. Obviously, we spoke last week about George Edmondson. Again, fantastic on Tuesday night. And the interview at full time as well with George Edmondson and Hayden Hackney was fantastic as well. George Edmondson losing his voice for that interview. Yeah, just a top 3 points on the road. The first team to score away at West Brom this season, and also the first team to win at the Hawthorns this season as well, which is very, very nice. That win put us into the playoff places as well, which look, it's mad how things can change in the league. After the Sunderland performance, we spoke about it on here that we wanted changes, a little bit of a doom and gloom podcast, that one, and then a couple of changes to the team, a couple of changes in personnel and tweaks to the system. You get 6 points out of six following that defeat, and you're in the playoffs. It's a mental league. I know it is early on, but we want to stick with that pack from the early stages of this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you just touched on it there, but I just wanted to say, in terms of the performance, in any successful team, you've got to build solid defensive foundations. And bearing in mind that the centre half partnership changed again on the night, obviously Rav van den Berg come back into the team and started the game. I thought we were so solid. I mean, as you say, Maja has that chance, and Wallace has a really good opportunity in the first half. But other than that, I honestly didn't. Of course, you get the butterflies in the stomach, the bitten nails when you're away from home, winning 1-0. You're almost expecting it. The typical Boro mindset kicks in, and you just think they're going to nick one last minute of the game. They haven't really done enough to deserve it, but they'll steal a point off us. And do you know what? That was there to an extent, but I felt like the way that we defended our box was so, so strong. And Rav van den Berg, I know he gets the plaudits for being a progressive passer and kind of, I know we joked about it a few weeks ago, but has that little bit of Rolls Royce aura where he just passes the ball that little bit more crisply. But I think, honestly, an underrated kind of part of his game, which, given the timing of this podcast, is again a little bit ironic because he's involved in Watford's winner yesterday and doesn't win a second ball. But actually, especially on Tuesday, I thought the side of his game that we love George Edmondson for, where it's just a case of the natural art of defending, really excelled. Him and Edmondson actually looked like a really good, well-balanced pairing. And bearing in mind, I know the professional footballers, you expect them to be able to play a certain position regardless of the side of the pitch they're on. But George Edmondson plays as the left-hand sided centre-half. And, it's sometimes, I think, even at times last season where Paddy McNair played there, or rather when we played the back three and Paddy McNair played as the left-hand side of the back three under Chris Wilder, sometimes some of the criticism come from the fact that it kind of gets worked out when you are shoe not shoehorning it, DME, horseshoeing it around the pitch, I should say. It gets out to the left-hand sided centre half, and it almost kills a little bit of momentum because it's not kind of their natural body instinct to open out onto their left foot. But I thought Edmondson looked really comfortable, looked really assured on the ball. And as I say, I put a tweet out on the Boropolis account after the game. Honestly, if you chucked a brick into the box, he'd head it. He is that type of defender. And the biggest praise I can give him is now when we come back from the break, obviously hoping and praying that Rav goes away and doesn't get injured. And obviously congratulations to him on his call up to the Netherlands under 21 squad. But for me, Matt Clark doesn't get back into the team. That pairing at the moment have done enough. And George Edmondson especially, he has grasped that opportunity with both hands. And I was really, really impressed with the way he defended his own box. And as I say, the reason why I was quite calm really in those closing embers of the game was, well, largely down to George Edmondson. And I just want to give a special shout out to Isaiah Jones as well. Obviously, could have quite well thrown his toys out the pram. He'd been dropped for Doak. Doak come in and scored, obviously getting rave reviews, and then Doak does really well and he's involved in another goal. But Isaiah Jones come on the pitch and defensively was exceptional, supporting Ayling, won a few free kicks, made it awkward for West Brom to kind of attack down that side. And in the closing embers, I think he took a yellow card, just taking one for the team. And sometimes you need to do that. You need to do the ugly side of the game. And it's I know I used this phrase last week when referring to Latte Laugh, but a bit of a testament to his character because, you know, he's come out the team and defending a lead, he could have come on and been quite lazy and not really applied himself. And he absolutely did do that in the closing embers. And you know, I saw your post after the game, and I think it was something like, in bold capitals, statement made. And that's exactly what that win was. As you say, 2 wins on the bounce, the first team to win away at West Brom all season, the first team to score. And from that moment, you think, my goodness, like we're about to go into the international break. We've just got 2 wins on the bounce. We beat West Brom at their stomping ground. And that's the type of win, especially on Sky, the main event on Sky, where other teams in the league look around and think, tell you what, Middlesbrough might have found their feet here. You know, they're kind of year on year, everyone says, oh, Middlesbrough, the team, they're going to be first or second, or at least one of the teams challenging. And unfortunately, for the last few years, we haven't kind of quite sustained that all season. But as your post alluded to, it was a statement victory. And even, I think, you know, you've put on a good performance when, again, like I said a few weeks back, I went straight onto the West Brom hashtag and all I could see was praise. There was no sour grapes. It wasn't West Brom fans saying, well, we just had an off day. It was Middlesbrough came to our stadium and done a job on us and took their chance and won the game and defended exceptionally well. And then obviously you get kind of, well, up until those 2 substitutions yesterday on the 62nd minute, I think, it looked like it was going to be the same type of performance, if not more convincing from Middlesbrough. But yeah, just kind of finishing up on West Brom, as you say, at that point, it felt like a huge statement to the rest of the division.
Yeah, 100%. It's no mean feat going away to West Brom, especially in the current form that they've shown so far this season. And yeah, we performed exceptionally well all over the pitch, defensively, offensively, and of course the 2 in midfield that you mentioned, Morris and Hackney. Hackney, man of the match on Sky, and Michael Carrick said in his post-match that Hayden Hackney is better than he was. Uh, Keep that very quiet, Michael, if you actually believe that. But yeah, it was a fantastic win, and it set us up very nicely for a trip to Vicarage Road this Saturday. And as I said at the start of the podcast, I was confident going there that we would be able to get a positive result. As mentioned at the start of the podcast, I haven't watched the full game, but having seen snippets of reaction throughout, it seems like we've let this one slip on our own accord, haven't we, Chris?
Yeah, you're right in saying that. I'm sure, obviously, as you've just mentioned there, you've seen the goals and you've seen kind of various clips and sort of tried to watch as much as you could, really. But to be honest, it felt like two completely different sides from the moment that Ben Doak and Micah Hamilton come off the pitch. The game basically completely changed. Boro lost all of their momentum. They lost all of their attacking threat. And to put it bluntly, they kind of just fell to pieces. Obviously, the big kind of headline was the fact that Riley McGree took a seat on the bench and Micah Hamilton started his first game. Look, I think we're well past the point of conspiracy theories now. It's Michael Carrick just trying to basically save Riley McGree's legs. We've only just got him back. We know his injury record, and we know that he'll be going away on international duty as well. And as frustrating as it is, unfortunately, with Riley McGree, I guess, when he's just come back, you've got to manage his minutes a little bit. And that's what he did. And do you know what? I actually thought Micah Hamilton, although I'm not so sure about kind of some of the comments that I've seen about him being absolutely phenomenal yesterday. That's not me saying that I don't think he had an okay game. He certainly didn't look out of place. I think his first start in the League Cup against Stoke didn't really get an awful lot of the ball, had that chance and sort of didn't really do much. A lot of his substitute cameos, we haven't seen an awful lot of him, to be honest. From the flashes that we've seen, he's looked neat and tidy, but I think he come on against Derby on the right, and I think we mentioned a few podcasts ago, he looks so much more comfortable coming in off the left. That seems to me where Michael Carrick now views him. Obviously, he played off the left yesterday. Obviously, offers you something completely different to Riley McGree. He's a little bit more direct, more of the kind of traditional winger. But yeah, I thought he looked comfortable without kind of being amazing by any stretch. He gave us uh, a little bit of composure in the final third. He gave us a little bit of trickery. He allowed Neto Borges to kind of get beyond him due to the fact that obviously he's a right footer playing on the left. So he does kind of naturally come inside, and sometimes he will do a little trick and sort of play one at the edge of the box or hold off a little bit and let Borges go beyond him. And Doak, the same, really lively as we expect from him now, to be honest. And although he didn't have Ken Sema on toast, there was a few times where he had the beating of him. Ken Sema knew he was in for a game. Every time Doak got the ball, he tried to beat him. And quite a few times, to be fair, he was defended well against. I thought Sema did well to defend against his skill and his pace and his trickery. And to be honest, we were just talking about it before we started recording, and I said largely part of the reason why the likes of McGree has made such an impact, and part of the reason why you've seen the likes of Hackney flourish as of late, and obviously, I know Latilaf hasn't been in the goals, but that attacking sort of four has looked more comfortable and more of a threat in general. And that largely comes down to the fact that when you get the ball to Ben Doak, it immediately, from an opposition point of view, kind of draws the attention to Boro's kind of danger man, really. There's an obvious concentration where everyone kind of thinks we've got to deal with him because on his own, he can carve a team open, he can get to the byline, he can beat three players just with his pace and trickery. And that then allows the likes of McGree, who picks up those half spaces in and around the box, or Hamilton yesterday, or Azaz in certain periods, to basically, because of you mentioned it last week, because there's not so much of a creative kind of burden on just one specific player, it allows some of the other clever players in and around the opposition box to have a little bit more freedom. And as soon as Doak come off the pitch yesterday and McGree come on, and listen, everyone was sort of crying out before the game for McGree to start. That's basically where the game flipped on its head. I mean, obviously, Middlesbrough did take the lead. we had two phenomenal chances in the first half. Finazaz has a header from probably 6 yards out. Look, I've seen a little bit of conversation around the fact that Finazaz headering the ball's not his strength by any means, and he's not used to having those sort of chances. He's a professional footballer who plays in an attacking position. He's got to do better. It's as simple as that. Latilaf's header is slightly more difficult. Ogbonna does quite well to apply a bit of pressure and sort of put him off. But yet again, it's a story of the game could have been out of sight. Bento kind of had a really good chance in the second half, I think actually just after we'd taken the lead. And we do take the lead from kind of the most unlikely of sources, really. We praised him for his defensive work, but he pops up with it's a little bit fortuitous. It kind of just hits him and goes in, but it comes from a Finazaz free kick. I've seen people try to claim it's Finazaz's assist, and listen, I don't know. Statistically, it might go down as his, but to be honest, he puts a low cross into the box with not an awful lot of power on. I think it's a Sissoko from a Watford point of view that kind of doesn't really manage to sort his feet out in time. It bounces off him, and Edmondson kind of just steers it goalwards, and we take the lead. And from that moment, you just expect Middlesbrough to kick on, really. Watford, apart from a chance that Hayden Hackney had gifted Tommins in the first half, they'd created nothing. They didn't offer, for me, anything in the game at all. It seemed a bit of a one-sided game, if I'm completely honest. And then, as I say, the game just absolutely transformed when Carrick made those substitutions.
Yeah, I think I could understand the change of system, I suppose, yesterday with Hamilton coming in and being more of a direct winger off the left-hand side. Because as we spoke about last week with Watford's system themselves, with their three at the back with wing backs, keeping two direct wingers on the pitch, keeping their wing backs pinned back would have been a massive sort of plus point for Boro to be able to do that and limit their threat, which we did. We did do. And then with McGree coming onto the pitch off the left and Jones off the right, okay, you do have Jones. And I was going to say his directness there. He's nowhere near as direct as Ben Doak anymore, which is a shame. And obviously Riley McGree, he's never been a direct player. He's a technical player that is there to link play, really, more than anything. With Hamilton as an actual out and out winger as well, he'll have constantly been drilled into him to support his fullback all the way through his development at Manchester City, playing in a team that plays a back four. And look, the goal, yeah, okay, it comes from Jones making a poor pass on the right hand side, and the ball gets switched very, very quickly. One pass through the middle of our pitch, and then towards the right hand side where Andrews is flying forward. Neto's 1v1 against him. One pass inside, and look, I think question marks have to be asked. One about getting out quicker from the defenders to Kiyembe, but also I know it may be harsh because it has come through bodies, but the ball is
It's not even
frightening.
really in the corner, is it?
It's frighteningly close to Dieng, really. It's not in the corner. It's pretty much just to the left of the middle of the goal. It's it's not a great shot. It hasn't got loads of power on it. Yeah, it's a killer, really. And I'm gonna be honest, from then on, I was fearing the worst. When you concede an equaliser late, and you look at the substitutions made. Yes, okay, Riley McGree's fantastic in the beginning of a game, and as the game moves on, he's not an impact substitute for me. I don't think that was ever going to happen. And Jones as well, really. I know it's harsh, but he's not going to give you that same impact that Doak would if he came off the bench. That's definitely not me saying start Doak on the bench, by the way. It's just me sort of being critiquing the substitutions themselves. Yeah, I just think that the substitutions were wrong. And of course that's me speaking in hindsight and seeing what transpired once those substitutions had been made. But that they've killed us in the end, really.
Yeah, they completely have it. It wasn't even as though, and look, they're not going to be bothered. They've come away with the 3 points, but it wasn't as though Watford, even after the changes, started kind of bombarding us and absolutely, passing us off the park and battering us. It wasn't even that, but the kind of the old saying of attack is the best form of defense, our lack of attack as soon as those substitutions were made basically meant that Watford were just able to grow into the game, and they replaced Daniel Jebison and brought Quado Bar on, who's a big handful, and they also brought on Bio, who's got a good record against us. To be honest, I was just waiting for him to score, but that changed things a little bit. They give Edmondson and Vandenberg something a little bit more physical, a little bit something more direct to think about. And Kayembe, weirdly enough, I've always known him as more of a defensive midfielder, and I know that Tom Cleverley's kind of, you mentioned last week that he now sort of when he does play, plays a little bit further forward in kind of almost a withdrawn sort of as one of the two at the top of a kind of box midfield. And yeah, one thing that I will say is Watford improved when Sissoko went off the pitch. I mean, when you consider what Sissoko used to be for Newcastle all them years ago, an absolute driving force in midfield. His legs looked absolutely spent yesterday. I mean, there was a few times where Boro were on the attack and he wasn't even in the frame. He's kind of like trudging back, and that, to be fair, was an awful kind of few times. Finn Azar's managed to pick up positions in his number 10 role where he did have kind of freedom to get shots off. I mean, it doesn't really matter if you kind of shoot with the strength of a sort of 6-year-old lad on a Sunday, but he was getting shots off nonetheless. But yeah, their midfield and sort of just attacking output and driving sort of forward ability in the game improved when those changes were made. And yeah, look, the goal that wins them the game is really shit, to be honest, from a defensive perspective. It's as simple as it comes. It's a long throw into the box. Porteous wins the first contact. I think Borges loses the initial header, and then Quado Bar. It's a tidy finish, to be fair. Question marks about, you want one of your centre halves to go and win that second ball. Question marks again that from the long throw, you're thinking, really, Middlesbrough have got to kind of be hoping for the first contact from a long throw. Yeah, okay. If I'm honest, the equaliser annoyed me more because we were in such a good position and it's just a complete lack of quality. And yeah, okay, there's still an awful lot to do from when Jones gives it away, but it's actually a really good opportunity and Jones basically just gives it straight back to them. They then obviously attack us and catch us on the break. And again, question marks about the end completely, but yeah, it was a little bit of a story of substitutions. And I mean, to be honest, as soon as we'd conceded the equaliser, I mean, another substitution, which basically has, I was going to say, affected the game. I think that would be putting it quite kindly. There was no impact on the game from Delano Bergzorg. I mean, I almost had PTSD from seeing him in blue and white stripes, thinking, oh my God, we've turned into Huddersfield. He, I mean, for all that Latilaf struggling in front of goal at the moment, I think I'd rather have a spent Latilaf up top chasing balls down and hoping that something ricochets or goes his way. You have Marcus Force on the bench. I know he did come onto the pitch and obviously he's been out for an awful long time, but if he's fit enough to come on when you're chasing the game. For me, he's fit enough to come on kind of as it goes 1-1. Yeah, it was. I mean, whatever's the opposite of an inspired substitution, it was. It didn't affect anything really. It kind of lessened or even lessened kind of threat of attack once Doak and Hamilton had gone off the pitch. And yeah, to be honest, it's yet again that horrible old saying. It's typical Boro, because at 1-0 you're coasting. Those changes happen, and Watford managed to take all 3 points. And look, you've got to have perspective by all means, but I think what worried me yesterday was kind of the element of capitulation. It almost felt inevitable once we'd conceded the first that we were going to concede the second. And for all that I praised Isaiah Jones for his defensive work, you know, although Doak and Doak and Hamilton go off the pitch, you know, it's not that much of a sort of drop in quality where it should absolutely flip a game on its head that much. And yesterday it really, really did. Okay, yeah, Watford play their part in that, but it almost as if we were kind of performing it, 80, 70%. And then those changes were made and kind of someone just flicked on like energy saver mode. And we just thought like, we'll just sort of perform at 40%. We'll not really try and get our second. We'll not try and put Watford to bed. And we'll just kind of coast it through. And ultimately we paid the biggest price.
Yeah, I think that in our case, yes, okay, ironic that we won 1-0 at West Brom on Tuesday night, but going away from home, it's always a difficult task. But with the amount of chances that we created, you can't just go and sit on a 1-0 lead, really.
No.
It piles the pressure on your back four and your midfield to keep a clean sheet, really.
I mean, even, sorry to interrupt, Nathan, even against West Brom, you say, I mean, by no means did we kind of have a load of openings, but even at 1-0, Bergsorg has that huge chance to double the lead at West Brom. We were still attacking, we were still posing something on the counter, even when we were under more pressure from West Brom than what we were kind of at any stage up until the substitutions yesterday. And as I said, sometimes attack is the best form of defence, and ultimately our lack of attacking threat after those substitutions is as I say, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but it's lost us the game really.
Yeah, it has. I think just sort of on reflection of not Watford anymore, but as this 5 game period draws to a close, I think that going into this, after the start that we'd had, we've picked up 7 points from those games. Losses to Sunderland and Watford, a draw against Preston, and 2 wins against Stoke and West Brom. I think reflecting as a whole, I think that in the Preston game probably deserved more. I think that in the Sunderland game, we definitely deserved to lose that one. Stoke deserved to win. West Brom deserved to win. Watford probably deserved to win. But look, lackadaisical 15-minute period at the end of the game costs you 3 points, not even just one,
Yeah,
which is an absolute killer, really. If we would have won that game yesterday, we'd have been 2 points off the top of the league, 2 points off the automatic promotion places. Now we lie ninth place in the division, 14 points on the board, 5 points off the automatic promotion places. A little bit frustrating, isn't it? Really?
it's underwhelming, and especially when you are going into the international break. I think that hurts more because you've got all that extra time to stew on it. And look, results wise, obviously we know for a fine fact you've there's nothing that you've said in terms of kind of individual results from performances that I disagree with necessarily. We didn't do an awful lot in the Sunderland game to win that. I don't think Sunderland did either, but ultimately, on the basis of things, we didn't deserve to win. That's 100% sure. But I think just in terms of common themes, standout sort of patterns within games, things that Boro can work on in the international break and moving forward, if we are going to be one of those teams that are in that kind of pack of challenging the two teams in red and white, Sunderland and Sheffield United at the moment. What is kind of the key to takeaways for you in terms of individuals, in terms of the shape of the team, in terms of injuries? What has this group of games given you? Because look, it's almost too kind of cliche for me to say we need to start putting teams to bed. That's been the case for Middlesbrough since the club was formed, really. It seems like if you speak to a Middlesbrough fan of any age, we've never been able to put games to bed. But in terms of, I mentioned it in the last podcast, from a mentality perspective, and one player, just touching on it, that I think will make a difference in this instance is I want us to develop just that killer instinct. And Marcus Force is one of the only players where I feel like he has that within him, where if he gets one chance or two chances, he's going to take at least one of them. And I think in games going forward, obviously we haven't had him available for, the beginning of the season up until these last two games. But we lack such a killer instinct. And look, again, I don't necessarily kind of want to hone in on one player, but I'm sick to death of watching the likes of Finn Azaz kind of course through games and not really. And yeah, okay, people might say, oh, he got another assist yesterday, borderline if it's even his assist, but he has numerous chances to get shots off during a game, gets a shot off, it's weak. And really, I know there was like a bit of a conversation about, and kind of the decision, was made for Michael Carrick, because obviously Tommy Conway has picked up that knock and hopefully he's going to be back after the international break. But I want all of our killers to be kind of on the pitch at once. I want chance takers. I want better conversion rates. And I know they're all like sort of things. It's all right me saying it, but I'm almost sick of like the kind of style with no substance. And that seems harsh because we've had two really good results before this result. But if you're looking at the bigger picture and kind of the whole season, we need to find that cutting edge, that killer instinct. And it might partially be down to individuals. It might be down to that we aren't actually, some of the chances we are creating aren't as good opportunities as what we perhaps think they are. And we're just placing a little bit too much of a kind of, you've got to stick that away sort of attitude towards some of these chances. I mean, like we said, Latty Laugh's had a few over the last few games, and arguably he should score against West Brom. Obviously, he hit the post against Stoke. We really need Latty Laugh to get a goal to start scoring. Hayden Hackney's obviously played a big part in the last few games at getting on the score sheet, but we need to start scoring goals and putting teams to bed. You're not really, and I know that seems like so obvious. Anyone that watches football can go, yeah, you need to start scoring more goals and then you'll start winning games. But those types of performances where the underlying data is really good and you've kind of had 7 shots on goal with, little to kind of no actual chance of these shots going in. The likes of Conway coming back, the likes of Force, I'm just hoping that improves that element of our attack, because at the moment, how can you expect to win games where really the importance in terms of from our business this summer was kind of on finding some of those X factor players that'll take games away from teams. I mean, somewhat we've had our Carrick's had his hands tied because of injury again, but we're kind of in the same boat where it's pretty to watch, but you know, Watford win the game yesterday, and 3/4 of the game is no one's going to remember that next week, are they?
No, it's not. You're right. The full-time score matters, doesn't it? Doesn't matter necessarily how you get the 3 points, you get them on the board. And yeah, we've got the highest expected goals in the league, which is just over 16. We've scored 10. So there's a massive disparity there. I think prior to the last international break, our disparity was 4. It's now 6. So it's just getting worse. We are creating a hell of a lot of chances and good ones at that. And some of the misses are unforgivable, really. Azaz has to put that chance away yesterday. It's a free header from 6 yards out. He's got the whole goal to aim at with the header.
You think of Conway at Sunderland, that's another great chance. I know I've just been crying out
Yeah.
for him. I can't wait to see him back, but you know, there's we could list chances. There's some arguments to say that XG is a little bit flawed because people kind of use it in different ways, which can be misinterpreted. But the fact of the matter is, we're creating a lot of chances and not really statistically putting the ones away that the underlying data and science says that we should be. So, that's not on Michael Carrick. He can't go on the pitch and score the goals himself and take the shots on. But it's an interesting one, I guess, in terms of personnel, because you are going to have the likes of Force back. You're going to have the likes of Conway back, hopefully. And you think of Latilaf and everything that he does bring to the team. But listen, as much as he does give you an awful lot when he's not scoring goals, and I made that point last week, there's only so long you can kind of go on without your striker scoring goals. And there's only so long where you can allow Finazaz to float through games without kind of making meaningful impacts. So I guess there's that element, but with our injury record, I mean, God knows how we'll be shaping up by the end of the international break. You just kind of hope that the business that we've done and the likes of Hamilton, Force, hopefully Latilaf gets back on the goals trail. McGree's not ever really been a kind of potent finisher or a goal scorer by any means, but you've got to hope that those types of chances start going in and we start seeing some kind of upturn in that data, because kind of from all of the people that you read who are heavily into that side of the game, and I'm not going to lie, me and you will always talk about kind of how we're more so on the side of watching football with your eyes, and I'm not like battering that element of watching football at all. There's like we know that Middlesbrough's recruitment is heavily impacted by data. We're not living in the Stone Ages anymore. I seen a clip this week of a certain ex-Boro striker talking about how simple football is and how wingers get to the byline, put a cross in, and then the striker scores a goal, and that's that. It's not as easy as that. The game's changed an awful lot, but at the end of the day, you still need to put chances in the back of the net, and you need to rely on the likes of your summer business, Tommy Conway, Marcus Force, obviously not summer business, but I feel like I'm going around in circles almost. But you know, the underlying data says it will come. It needs to come.
Yeah, it needs to come very, very soon, especially with the run that's coming up after this international break. There's some sides within this run that are creating chances and are putting them away. They're ruthless. and we need to find something to be able to match up against these sides. Just a quick run through of the 6 games that's in the next block of fixtures before another international break. Bristol City at the Riverside, Sheffield United at the Riverside, Norwich City away, Coventry at home, QPR away, and Luton at home. I think the block in the middle of that, Sheffield United, Norwich, and Coventry, all back to back to back, is enough to make me feel sick, really.
And that's even after the start that Coventry have had.
Yeah, yeah.
I
But
mean, by now we know that this is how. I mean, if you want to look and put a positive spin on things, usually we're round about where Coventry are about this time of the season, and we're not quite there yet. Of course, they will have their annual turn in form where they'll probably put kind of 9 wins together, and you'll think, oh, there they are. They're a position behind us, and normality is resumed. So look, I'm not making too much of Coventry's start, but as you say, I think especially Sheffield United, of course, without their points deduction, they'd be sat top of the league. They're the only team in the EFL that haven't been beaten yet this season. And that game in itself, because of everything that it brings with it, because the fact Sheffield United will travel well, and because that fat idiot will be in the dugout, it's gonna have not a derby feeling to it by any stretch. And for any Sunderland fans that are watching, no, I'm not calling another game a derby. That's not a derby. It's actually not a derby, this one, and there's no way it possibly is. It might just have the feeling of a slight rivalry because of the context around the fixture. But Norwich as well, they're just hitting form under their new manager. They put 4 past Hull yesterday. Some of their standout men, obviously, we know that Josh Sargent is a really, really good striker in this league. We know Marcelino Nunes and the quality he has, and then Borja Sainz. I mean, he's made some impact in this Norwich team last season. He made some impact on our team last season with his red card at the Riverside, and Johnny Howson's play acting. The Norwich fans will. I wonder if they'll still be bringing that up when it comes down to that fixture. I'd imagine so. But yeah, I mean, you couldn't really get in terms of kind of current form. You look at those two teams and you think, wow, that's really as West Brom was. That's a real test. And yeah, there's some favourable games. There's some games where it's going to be incredibly difficult. And just like we were at on Tuesday night, you've got 2 home games back to back after the break. You beat Bristol City. If you can then get a result against Sheffield United, the fan base is up here, and you think, right, we've turned the corner again. But it's about prolonging that, and that kind of turn in form lasting longer than 2 games. By no means, I'm not getting carried away. Yesterday, as you can probably tell by listening to this podcast, is took it out of me, but it's still fresh. It still hurts, and because we were so good in spells in the game and then we just fell off a cliff, I think it hurts more. And the thought of the international break is just, I don't even want to think about it. But one talking point that I do just want to kind of touch on, comments from a certain Ryan Giles this morning or yesterday evening in the press confirming that actually there was conversations in the summer. It wasn't all just one big fantasy that was never ever going to happen. He's not in the team at Hull at the moment. Up until yesterday, funnily enough, when Norwich battered them, he hasn't been in the team. And he come out yesterday and spoke and said, my head is on Hull. It always has been. I've remained 100% focused, and I want to kind of prove to the supporters that this is why you bought me, and I can offer you that. But in all honesty, the more things rumble on, you hear those comments, it just yet again feels like we're probably going to have the will they, won't they saga again in January.
yeah, it's a very, very strange one, isn't it? I'm gonna be honest, his interview didn't sound very convincing. He didn't get drawn too much when pushed upon Tan Kessler's comments that he made on him, but what he did say, he didn't sound very, very pleased with them. But yeah, it's one of those things up until January. If it comes up, it'd be interesting to see if it did come up. If it doesn't, then yeah, we'll see them after the next international break anyway, when hopefully we put 12 past them. Dork's gonna have a field day, I'm gonna be honest.
Well, I mean, he might not. I mean, Giles might not even be playing. He might still be sat on the bench. I don't know if you're referring to because he might play against Giles, but
Both.
I mean, he may just have a field day anyway. Yeah, Nathan, look, reflecting, as you say, kind of on what's ahead and where we're at the moment going into the international break. Everyone, the old cliches, you can't judge a team or you can't look at the table until 10 games. Okay, yeah, we're not at 10 yet. We're at 9. But because of the way the international break falls, you've had 2 patches of games now. If you were going to grade Boro's season so far, what grade would Mr. Rayner give Michael Carrick and his team?
C plus probably. Might sound a little bit harsh, but we're just inconsistent so far, really. We've seen flashes of brilliance, really. Dork's been outstanding in the last 3 games. It's really nice to have an outlet on that right hand side. We looked better with McGree back in the team in the previous 2 games to Saturday. As I mentioned, I understand why he changed that with Hamilton coming into the team, but it looks like he's found a little bit of a formula with Dork on that right, McGree on the left, etc., etc. But I think that the top and bottom of it is we need to be more clinical in front of goal. That is the standout still in both blocks of games. We haven't been clinical enough. We need to be more ruthless, 100%. If we begin to be more ruthless, we'll fly up the league. I think that the volume of chances that we create, it'll be just teams won't be able to compete with us if we start putting 2 or 3 chances away a game.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at. I'd probably give the exact same grade, to be honest. And do you know what is nice at this stage of the season? I actually still look at that squad of players and what's to come back as well and think it really wouldn't shock me if we go on a run of kind of 7 or 8 games on the bounce and win every one of them. It honestly wouldn't. I think that squad's got it within them. And to be honest, throughout Michael Carrick's tenure, I know last season it was sort of 2 separate chunks. And then obviously in his first season, we got that one magnificent one, which got us into a position where people thought, oh my God, they might actually crack the top 2 here. But from what we've seen of Michael Carrick's teams at one stage or another, you do get a spell of games where basically it clicks into gear and you kind of just steamroll teams for 6 or 7 games at a time. And the hope is, I guess, over the previous seasons when we've had those runs, sometimes we've ran out of steam. I think especially last season, we've had those runs, but then ran out of steam because of the lack of numbers and because we didn't have depth to the squad. We don't really have that excuse this season when we do sort of start to run out of steam. We've got options. We do have a lot of quality within that team, and as I say, you've got players returning. I'm excited to get back after the international break and see what 2 home games are going to do for us, because Bristol City, you'd expect them to come at the other side and mirror exactly what Preston did, exactly what Stoke didn't do, and exactly what Portsmouth did as well, and Preston, as I mentioned. Sheffield United, though, it's an intriguing one because they've had such a clear out of players and such a kind of change in the way that Chris Wilder usually plays. Goodbye to overlap and centre halves and kind of hello to natural wide men, really. Obviously, we saw Raksaki get a brace yesterday, and I'm not sure to the extent of Gus Hamer's fitness, but I mean, we've got previous with him anyway, and whatever you say about him, he's one of the best players in the division on his day, without a shadow of a doubt. Whether they come and tactically think that it's going to be best for them to sit in, I don't know. I've got to be honest, I haven't watched an awful lot of them this season just yet. So I'm intrigued to see obviously how they're performing so well and why they are where they are. But yeah, I'm certainly not finishing this group of games and thinking, oh dear, are we just kind of already at a point where we're chasing shadows? And I mean, 9 games would be very early to think that, but I mean, given our start last season, it felt really after the kind of second group of games. I know we did start putting a little bit of form together, but it felt like already kind of things were beginning to be out of reach, and it was going to take a monumental effort to even get kind of back in with amongst those top sort of 4 teams. This season, obviously, there's still that cushion of points. And last season, of course, there was, 3 exceptional teams in this division. I don't want to kind of get drawn on the teams that were chasing, because if I'm completely honest, I think that's when hopefully when we get into the thick of it, the depth in our squad this year will prove one of the factors why we start to see a little bit of a drop off, and hopefully we can kick on, but that remains to be seen. But yeah, I'd go C minus or C plus probably. I think C plus. Definitely room for improvement, but promising signs, I think, Nathan.
Yeah, 100%. Looking forward to returning after the international break already. It hasn't even started yet, but it's just boring as. Yeah, let's get back to the championship action as soon as possible and hope for a Boro bounce back against Bristol City.
Yeah, and look, Bristol City at home last season. We've spoken about this podcast, spoken on this podcast, sorry, about those days on Baker Street that we had. That happened to be one of those, and it was arguably one of our worst performances of the season. So let's put them demons to bed, and then let's get right up for you know who in that dugout. That's if the Burnley job hasn't come up by then and he hasn't decided to jump ship. We'll wait and see. We'll obviously have a break from the podcast, but yeah, exciting things to come. Keep an eye out on the socials for any exciting news that we might have up our sleeve. And yeah, that has been another episode of the Boropolis podcast. Please do like and subscribe on YouTube. Give us a rate and review on podcast platforms. And we will hopefully see you very soon with more wins to talk about. Thanks so much for watching. That has been another episode of the Boropolis podcast.